Well, happy New Year, everyone! It's great to be with you, even though I'm on holidays at the moment. I'll be back next week. But this morning we're looking at Colossians chapter 3, and this is just an incredible passage. It's one of my favourites. I think it's fantastic to start the year with, and it was just read to us there before. But in this passage, something radical happens to us Christians, and it changes us. Right? The person that we were, our identity changes, and the way that we lived and the way that we will live in 2021, how we live day by day changed. And this event that changed us is sharing in Christ's death and resurrection. And it is a positive change, let me tell you. And so let's begin by looking at this life-changing event. And then after that, we'll look at what it looks like to live in response to this life-changing event. So Paul's writing to a group of Christians, a little group of Christians in Colossae, and you can see there in verse 1, he says, "Since then you've been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God, and not on earthly things." He says, you have a new identity. You have a new life. Who you are is now wrapped up in the fact that you have been raised with Christ. In other words, Christians are so connected with Jesus that the things that he has done become ours. See, in the past, when Jesus died and when he came to life again, and when he died and came to life, he what did he do? He gave sin that fatal blow. He defeated it. Paul's saying we shared in that. It's like we died. It's like we were raised. At that point, sin was gone from us. And so now, in the present, verse 3, it means that my life is now hidden with Christ. I love that word, hidden. It's beautiful, isn't it? It carries that sense of being, like cuddled up in or wrapped up in, underneath, surrounded by, intimately involved in. Boy, I would like to be hidden in Christ in 2021, wouldn't you? Given the year that we've just had and the uncertainty of the year ahead, I tell you what, I want to be wrapped up in Christ. That sounds safe, doesn't it? That sounds hopeful. Being joined and hidden in the Lord of all history, Jesus Christ, to be led by him, to follow him, to walk under him, our life involved in his life. That is what I want this year, and I hope you do as well. And I know that even if I fall short, and I know I will, and you will, we all fall short, don't we? Or even if 2021 is as bad as 2020, then we are hidden in his perfect work. And it's stunning, actually, what that means not only for 2021, but what it means for the future. We don't have to live for them now. We don't have to live for this year. We don't have to just look to the... We see, verse 4, Paul says, have a look there, verse 4, if you're a Christian, you will be with him in glory. Because you see, who you are now, if you're a Christian, is a wonderful thing, isn't it? I hope you can see that. I'm no longer Paul Webb. I'm no longer Paul Webb who, works at Chester Hill Anglican Church and has a wife called Beth and 5 kids and loves the Cronulla Sharks. I hope they do better this year. Loves the Sharks, loves the beach. No, that's not me, right? First and foremost, I'm a person of Christ. I'm with Jesus. That's who you are. His act in the past on the cross and the resurrection, it has changed me, it has changed you. And that's a beautiful thing. And it affects me in the present, and it gives me hope for the future. And so Paul urges us, and he says in 2021, he doesn't write that date there, but let me urge you, in 2021, here's Paul's words, set your minds on that reality, on heavenly things, because that's who you are. Set your mind on Jesus things first. Set your mind on the King's things, not worldly things. That was the past life before Christ. Okay, so that's pretty clear, and that's encouraging. But what does it actually mean? What does it look like to set our minds on Christ, set our minds on the things of heaven? Well, Paul actually goes on to tell us, and it's very clear. He gives us two lists, a list of don'ts and then a list of do's. And what these lists do is they build a bit of a picture of ingrained habit or habits or character. Things that just ought to come out of us as second nature. But of course, I just want to be clear, the things that we do, they come out of the heart, don't they? They come out of who we are. That's a really important point. As I've just said, we are now in Christ. We're wrapped up with Him. And so that comes before our changing character. Our new identity is something that's done by Christ alone. And because He died and rose, and because we're wrapped up in Him, now He changes our character, you see. It can be tempting to pull these lists of things here in this passage, just pull them out, a bit of a checklist, 2021, okay, tick, 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 tick. Make us feel good about ourselves if we do them, or reverse if we don't do them, which is probably more likely, then we feel bad about ourselves. But that kind of misses the point. You have to put them in the context, of course, of Christ having done it all, His grace profoundly shaping what we do, and that's the context, so keep that in mind. It's a response to Christ's work in us to change us. And so we begin at verse 5 and 6 with our first vice list, the character building do nots. Look at verse 5 and 6. Put to death, Paul says, therefore, he sort of focuses on sex here. Therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry, because of these, the wrath of God is coming. You see, Paul says, kill impurity, kill sexual passion and lusts and desires. These things belong to the worldly nature, which is true, isn't it, when you think about that? For society, the rest of the world out here, sex is a right to use as I want, isn't it? It's my body. I can do whatever makes me feel good, whatever fulfills me. That's what I'm going to do. However it defines me, I'm going to do that. That's what the world thinks, but we know that our identity, who we are, it's not wrapped up in our sexuality. It's not wrapped up in any of that. No, it's in Christ. Sexual expression doesn't define us. And so Paul says, put these earthly desires to death. The second list there, he looks at our speech. So in verse 8, Paul, he treats it like the first list, and he says, but now you must rid yourselves of all such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, filthy language from your lips. Don't lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self, with its practices, and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in the knowledge and the image of its creator. Words are very powerful things, aren't they? They are life-giving and soul-destroying. A friend of mine called me about 2 weeks ago now. She was pretty distraught because her husband had said to her, I want you to leave. I want you to, 5 words, absolutely soul-destroying. What about words of gossip? Oh, let's not have words of gossip in 2021. Tearing someone down with words, making things up behind their back, saying things without knowing the facts. I mean, we've all done it. We all do it, don't we? We've all had it done about us, and sometimes it's very painful, isn't it? And it's often very painful, and it's often very damaging. And do you know, once a word, I always think about this. Once a word leaves your lip, the damage is done instantly. How many times have you said something? You think, man, I wish I could just come back in. No. Once it leaves your lips, there's no coming back. The implications of what you've just said can last a lifetime because of a few careless words, whether you mean them or not. Words of anger, words of rage, whatever aspect of wrong speech, this behaviour has no place for those in Christ. Jesus people, right? We're Jesus people. We take off the words that bring each other down. They are being renewed. So let's choose our words wisely in 2021. It's a good challenge from Paul, isn't it? Well, lastly, we come to the do list. Well, previously it was about what we are to put to death. Here it's a character that we put on like clothing. It's a great image, doesn't it? When you decide to what clothes to put on in the morning, as you go through the day, people notice, right? Don't they? Whenever I wear this shirt, this you can see there's fish on it. Anywhere I go, people notice it, right? And mostly they say it's a bit of a weird shirt. Why are you wearing it? But people notice it. People notice what character you're clothing yourself in. So look at verse 12. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive whatever grievances you may have against one another. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. Boy, you just read that and you think, man, I'd like to be with people like that this year. Well, that's a beautiful picture. And that's the point, you see. These lists are meant to make life good as a community. Compassion and kindness, putting others before ourselves, patience, being able to accept one another and being able to forgive them. In fact, I think verse 14 there is the climactic virtue, love. Love underpins them all. It sort of rings them together. It's like the overcoat we wear over all the layers of the new clothes. And it's beautiful. It does sound beautiful, doesn't it? And we want that. And let's be like that. I hope we can as we grow. It's a good thing to do. But, the reality is relationships are messy, aren't they? And they're painful. And it's all good and well to say, yes, I'll do this. This is good. You can sit here on Zoom and you can listen to this passage and we can say, yes, let's be people who wake up on Sunday morning and we put on our Sunday best and our compassion and kindness and forgiveness and let's go to church and let's love each other. But it's not that easy, is it? It'll actually cost us something. This is something that is costly. It'll take us time. It'll take energy. It takes lots of conversations to do together. It's very relational. You can't do this on your own, do you see? Which means it can be messy. But doing life together is something that's character building, and we need each other, and we need to do this together. Our new identity in Christ, it's not an individual checklist, I guess is my point. But it's something we learn together by rubbing off each other's hard edges and being the one that brings the hard word and being the one that brings the kind word and the kind work and the one who just bears with you being a pain and bears with me being a pain and that's love, isn't it? And then verse 16 shows the base of how we love each other. It's being people of the word. Letting the word of Christ dwell richly in us. That's the key. The word just seeping out everywhere. True love has an anchor. It's not just a feeling, it's rather based in the gospel, do you see? And so if we really love one another, we remind ourselves of the message of Christ. For example, we sing. Why do we sing? Well, we sing because it reminds us of the message of Christ. We teach one another. We admonish one another. We don't just come to hear the pastor teach us. No, you come to church so they can be taught, but also to be taught by others. And, you get used to having gospel conversations with each other. Well, I need to wrap up. This is what it looks like to be people who have a new life in Christ. You've been raised with him. You can't go back to the earthly things. It's a life-changing event which impacts our character. And so let's live this out together in 2021 and beyond. Happy New Year, everyone.